subscribe to the channel right now. Hit that like button and get ready to witness the ultimate instant karma. What happens when a man throws away a diamond to pick up a rock? You're about to find out. After a farewell dinner with my ex-husband, I moved to the mountains alone to start a new life. He, in turn, fulfilled his dream of marrying his secretary. However, just one accidental comment from a guest during their wedding feast was enough for my ex-husband to lose his mind right on the spot. I pushed the heavy glass door of the restaurant that held our memories. The bronze bells chimed softly. The familiar aroma of pepper steak, a scent I once considered the fragrance of happiness, instantly hit my nose. 8 years ago, Leo, my husband at the time, had proposed to me at this very table in the corner. Today, I had booked the same table and ordered the same steak he loved so much for our farewell. On paper, we were about to cease being husband and wife. But this dinner was a final ritual to sever any emotional ties that still remained. He was 15 minutes late. The white shirt he wore was the very same one I had impeccably ironed last week before packing my things from our apartment. Leo pulled out the chair and sat down without an apology, not even glancing at me. His eyes were glued to his phone, fingers feverishly sliding across the screen. From time to time, a smirk appeared on that face I had once loved madly. I knew perfectly well who he was texting. Natalie, his very young secretary, the one who had crawled into our marriage. The waiter brought the dish. Leo's steak sizzled on the cast-iron plate, releasing fragrant smoke. He picked up his knife and fork, cut a piece, and began to chew mechanically. "I ordered what you like," I said, breaking the oppressive silence. "Yeah," he answered dryly, not taking his eyes off the phone. I looked at the man before me. His coldness no longer caused me pain. It evoked only a massive sense of relief. The glass of red wine on the table trembled slightly. I took a sip. Its bitterness helped me calm down. "When all the documents are ready, I've already bought a ticket," I said in a monotone voice. "I'm moving to Vermont as soon as this is all over." This time, his fingers froze. He raised his head. A fleeting surprise flashed across his face before being replaced by his habitual indifference. "Vermont? And what will you do there?" "Grandma left me a small house in Willow Creek, a village near the lake. I'm going to settle there." I thought he would ask something else, perhaps a feigned attempt to keep me, or at least an awkward wish for good luck. But no. Leo shrugged, as if I had just told him tomorrow's weather forecast. "Suit yourself," he said, and the smirk reappeared. "It's better this way. Natalie and I are preparing for the wedding, too. She deserves a top-tier ceremony. Natalie isn't like you. She knows what she wants, and she knows how to make me happy." I almost laughed. He was right. I wasn't like Natalie. I didn't know how to pretend to be weak, didn't know how to use tears to demand things, and I certainly didn't know how to sleep with other people's husbands. But I didn't say that. I just nodded. "Well, congratulations to you both." Dinner ended quickly, in silence. He didn't even look at me when he stood up to pay. He left in a hurry, probably running to his secretary who was waiting for him. I remained alone, staring at my almost untouched plate of steak. I signaled the waiter and asked for a box to go. Not out of pity, but because I didn't want to throw away the last dinner of our marriage. However tasteless and cold it had been, it had come to an end. I returned to our apartment, which was once our home. The silence was haunting. 8 years ago, Leo and I had put all our savings into buying this apartment in the center of New York City. I still remembered the day they gave us the keys. We cried with happiness. We painted the walls ourselves. We chose every piece of furniture together. I thought we would grow old here. I stopped in the middle of the living room. The beige sofa we had argued so much about choosing was now covered with a white sheet. The wall, formerly hung with photos from our wedding, was bare. Only the nail marks were visible. Everything was in place, but the soul of this place had vanished. I began packing 8 years of memories, now reduced to a few cardboard boxes. I opened the closet, my clothes on the left, his on the right. I neatly folded my dresses and blouses. A pair of his shirts were still mixed in with my clothes. I picked them up. The familiar smell of fabric softener still permeated the cloth. Before, this scent was synonymous with peace. Now, I shoved them all into a separate bag for their new owner. I opened the bottom drawer of the closet where I kept our keepsakes. A small wooden box contained old photographs. The first one we took together at university, our smiles still innocent. Photos from our wedding day, me shining in a white dress, him looking at me with infinite tenderness. 8 years. Where did that look go? I didn't cry. My tears had dried the day I discovered his messages. I felt only a deep exhaustion. I put the wooden box at the bottom of the suitcase. I wouldn't throw it away, but I would never open it again. It belonged to yesterday's chapter, a chapter that died along with our marriage. I spent the entire evening cleaning. When the apartment became almost empty, with only his things remaining, I took out my phone and sent him a message. I took my things. Keep whatever you want from the rest. I'm taking nothing but my clothes and personal items. The shared memories are in the desk drawer. Do what you want with them. A minute later, his reply came, as brief and cruel as always. Okay, thanks. I looked at the apartment one last time. Goodbye. Goodbye. 8 years of my youth. I left the key on the oak coffee table, right next to the TV remote. A dry click echoed through the empty room. I dragged my suitcase to the door and slammed it shut behind me, never looking back once. I felt a lightness, as if I had dropped a weight I'd been carrying on my shoulders for too long. Freedom. Finally. I was free. On the day of court, the sky over New York was neither rainy nor sunny. The air was humid and dense, like my mood months ago. But today, my heart was strangely calm. I wore a simple beige dress and light makeup. I didn't want to look like a victim on my last day as a wife. Leo was there too. He was in a suit, hair gelled, but the circles under his eyes betrayed his fatigue. Perhaps he was exhausted by the paperwork, or maybe by trying to please his pregnant mistress. The elderly judge in glasses looked at us with sympathy. Have you thought this through carefully? Marriage is for life. Yes, Your Honor. We have thought everything through carefully. We answered in unison. Everything went quickly. Signatures. Stamps. The judge declared us divorced. 8 years of life together ended with a thin sheet of paper. I received my divorce decree, a certificate of my solitude, which seemed both heavy and light at the same time. As soon as we left the courtroom, Leo's phone rang. He answered hastily, and his tone shifted from cold to sickly sweet. I'm already coming out, my love. Don't go anywhere. Wait for me. He hung up and walked past me as if I were a stranger, leaving in a rush. He was in such a hurry, he almost collided with a woman walking in the opposite direction. He didn't say a word of goodbye to me. I remained standing, watching his back disappear down the corridor. I smiled. Such an ending wasn't bad either. I was in a hurry too. I had left my suitcases with Marnie the day before. Now, I only needed to pick them up and head to Penn Station. Marnie, my best friend, was already waiting for me. As soon as she saw me, she rushed to hug me. Ariana, are you okay? Her voice was full of concern. I'm fine, I said, patting her back. Better than ever. Marnie looked me up and down and frowned. Well, yes, of course. Your face is paler than the wall. Will you manage there alone? She shoved a heavy fabric bag into my hand. Here. Some good cured meats, sausage from my hometown, and homemade jam. I know you're not used to the local food there yet. When you miss home, eat this so you don't feel so lonely. I laughed with a lump in my throat. In my worst moment, I still had someone who genuinely cared about me. Thank you, Marnie. Only you understand me. What's there to understand? She grumbled. Now that you're leaving, you must live well, become beautiful, get rich, and let that jerk die of envy. And don't you even think about crying over that idiot again. We sat in the station cafe, talking about everything and nothing. Marnie gave me 1,000 tips, from how to find a house to how to be careful with countrymen. She talked so much I could only listen and smile. I knew she was trying to cheer me up, to fill the void of our last minutes together. It came time to board. We hugged tightly at the gate to the platform. Take care of yourself, I whispered. If anything happens, let me know. I know. Don't worry. You too. As soon as you get there, call me. She let me go, but her expression became doubtful. Listen, Ariana, there's something. I don't know if I should tell you. What? I frowned. After all this, what else can I handle? Speak. Marnie took a deep breath and leaned close to my ear. Natalie is pregnant. I froze for a second, not from shock, but from the irony. So that was it. That was why he was in such a hurry with the divorce. That was why he didn't want any of our assets, just so I would sign the papers quickly. Ah, I forced a smile. Well then, double happiness. For them. That's not all, Marnie continued, her face full of disdain. They are planning an incredibly lavish wedding. My husband heard it will be at the Crystal Lake venue. They booked the entire main hall. This Natalie wants the wedding of the century to show off to the whole world. Typical shameless gold digger. Let them do what they want, Marnie. I shook my head. I don't care anymore, and I truly didn't care. The pain had turned into a scar. Now, hearing news about them seemed simply ridiculous to me. A greedy man and a mercenary woman. They deserved each other. But I'm worried, Marnie insisted. I have to go, I interrupted her. The train won't wait. I hugged her one last time, quickly, and turned resolutely. I went through ticket control without looking back. I felt Marnie's gaze seeing me off. Once in my seat, I turned off my phone. As the train pulled out of New York, leaving behind the gray city to delve into the green landscapes of the north, I knew a new life was waiting for me. And in this life, there would be no place for either Leo or Natalie. I took out my phone, snapped the old SIM card, and threw it in the trash bin. Blocked any possible contact with him. A clean break. Goodbye. Passed. The train ride lasted several hours. I barely slept. I read a classic novel, trying to reconnect with a culture I had pushed to the background. When the train began to slow down and the speaker announced the arrival at the station, my heart beat faster. I got off the train, and the fresh, damp air of Vermont filled my lungs. It was clean and transparent, very different from the stale air of the metropolis. The sky was an intense blue, without a single cloud, and the sun shone brightly, but didn't burn. Everything was unfamiliar. The accent, the people, even the smell in the air. But I felt not fear, but a strange excitement. I took a taxi to go to Willow Creek. The driver, a very nice middle-aged man, tried to strike up a conversation upon seeing me. First time in our parts, miss? Not exactly, I replied with a smile. I came once in my childhood with my grandmother. Now I'm returning to live in her house. The driver was surprised, and then laughed. Wonderful. Willow Creek is a beautiful village. You'll like it. The car left the town behind and delved into the countryside. Tall buildings gave way to wooded roads, meadows of rich green color, and charming wooden houses. The landscape was so peaceful, I rolled down the window and took a deep breath. The air smelled of wet grass, damp earth, and flowers. I knew I had made the right decision. The taxi stopped in front of an old fence covered in ivy, with a faded blue gate. I paid the driver and dragged my heavy suitcase through the gate. My grandmother's house appeared before me. It wasn't a luxurious mansion, but a cozy two-story wooden house with a slate roof. What left me speechless was the garden. It was an explosion of color. Climbing roses covered the walls. Hydrangeas of intense blue and purple formed huge bushes, and there was even a small apple tree laden with fruit. Before she died, Grandma hired a firm to look after the house and garden. I inserted the old key into the lock. The heavy wooden door opened with a soft creak. Inside, everything was clean and cozy. The furniture was solid wood in a rustic style. A stone fireplace dominated the living room, next to a wingback chair upholstered in floral fabric that Grandma loved so much. The sunset light penetrated through the large windows, painting golden highlights on the wooden floor. I left my suitcase and walked around the house. The small kitchen with copper pans hanging on the wall. My bedroom on the second floor, with a balcony opening directly into the garden. Everything was perfectly preserved, as if Grandma knew that one day I would return. I opened the balcony doors. The autumn breeze brought with it the scent of roses. I stood there with my eyes closed. All the sorrows and pain of my past marriage seemed to vanish with this wind. I was no longer Ariana, the devoted wife. I was Ariana, my grandmother's granddaughter, the mistress of this house. I was home. After a week of rest and putting my life in order, I started looking for a job. I had a degree in interior design and some experience in the city. I didn't want to look in the big city, but in Willow Creek or some neighboring town. I wanted a quiet life, without rush or competition. I prepared my resume and started sending it to small design studios in the area. Luck smiled on me sooner than I expected. 3 days later, I received an email inviting me for an interview at Soul Form, a small but respected studio in Willow Creek. I prepared nervously, chose an elegant suit, and reviewed professional terminology. The studio was in an alley, hidden behind lilac bushes. I was interviewed by Matthew, the owner of the studio. He was about 40 years old, brown hair slightly tousled, and very warm, kind green eyes. He carefully reviewed my portfolio, nodding at the sight of my previous projects. "Your resume is impressive," Matthew said in a low, calm voice. "But why did you choose a small studio in Willow Creek instead of a major company in New York?" I smiled and answered sincerely. "I came back because of my grandmother's house. I adore the peace of this village. I want to do work I love, but also have time to tend the garden and enjoy life. I think the quality of work doesn't depend on the size of the company." Matthew looked at me intently and then smiled. "I think exactly the same way. I hate the city. Too noisy." The interview turned into a pleasant conversation about design trends and personal tastes. Matthew was a kind boss, passionate about his work, and very respectful of his employees. The next day, while I was watering flowers in the garden, the phone rang. It was Matthew. "Hi, Ariana. Calling to share good news. Can you start next Monday? We have a project for a small country hotel, and we need someone with your refined taste." I was so happy I almost dropped the watering can. Yes, of course. Thank you, Matthew. Thank you very much." I already had a job I loved, in a place I loved. My new life had truly begun. My new routine was established quickly. I woke up every morning at 6:30, not from the piercing sound of an alarm, but from the singing of birds outside the window. I walked to the village bakery, bought a fresh bun and coffee. The smell of butter and coffee in the mornings filled me with energy. I walked to work. The studio was only 15 minutes from home. The road was shaded by trees and crossed an old stone bridge over a small river. My colleagues at the studio were very nice. There were only 5 of us, including Matthew. They welcomed me warmly, patiently helped me with local peculiarities, and always praised the dishes I sometimes brought them. Matthew was a wonderful boss. He immediately entrusted me with the country hotel project, giving me complete creative freedom. Work consumed me, leaving no time to think about the past. On weekends, I no longer had to cook and do laundry for someone who didn't deserve it. I dedicated time to myself, rode a bicycle along the river, visited antique markets, or simply sat in the garden with a book. I started tending my grandmother's garden, learned to prune roses and plant fragrant herbs. My hands were in the earth, but my heart was at peace. This life was the complete opposite of my 8 years of stifling marriage. I felt like I was being reborn. I laughed more, slept better. On Friday afternoon, a week before Leo's wedding, Marnie called me via video. "Oh my God, Ariana, look at you. Are you glowing, or is it just me? You have a blush, your face is fresh. The climate there must be good for you, huh?" I laughed. "Work is going well. The air is clean. How are you?" We talked for quite a long time. Just before hanging up, Marnie hesitated. "Listen, Ariana, next week is that bastard's wedding. Will you be okay?" I knew Marnie was worried about my feelings. I looked out the window. The setting sun painted the garden gold. "I'm fine," I said in a calm voice. "Next week I need to visit an antique pottery workshop. I'm too busy thinking about which tiles to choose for the hotel bathrooms. Wish them happiness. I'm busy planting flowers and working." Marnie looked at me for a long time through the screen, and then sighed with relief. "Yes, you're right. Being busy is the best thing. Screw them." I hung up and continued drawing my ideas. Their wedding day truly didn't worry me anymore. The day finally came. It was a Saturday afternoon in Vermont. I had just finished watering the hydrangeas when the phone rang insistently. It was a video call from Marnie. I smiled, wiped my hands on my apron, and accepted the call. Marnie's excited face appeared on the screen. She was at home in her pajamas, but the background sound was a chaos of music and voices. "Ariana, what are you doing?" Marnie shouted into the phone. "Just finished with the garden." "Why is it so noisy? Are you at a party? Are you crazy? My husband is there." Marnie rolled her eyes and lowered her voice. "He's at bastard Leo in that woman's wedding, and I forced him to broadcast everything to me live so you would know and gloat." Having said that, Marnie pointed the camera at her husband's phone screen. "I didn't need to see." Marnie's screechy voice was enough. "Mother of God, Ariana, what a waste of money. My husband says they booked the biggest hall at the Crystal Lake venue, red carpet from the entrance, imported flowers everywhere. They even hired a symphony orchestra. What a nightmare." I frowned. "Tell me about it." "My husband sent me a photo." Marnie turned the screen to show me a blurry image. "That Natalie's dress, they say it's designer, with Swarovski crystals, costs tens of thousands. And she even put on a tiara, like a fairy tale princess. And to top it off, she doesn't stop rubbing her belly while greeting guests. Well, you know, so everyone knows what a brazen woman she is." I shrugged. "And this Leo is bursting with pride," Marnie continued indignantly. "In his white suit, hair slicked back with gel, walking arm in arm with her, as if they are the kings of the world. My husband says his face is so arrogant, as if he conquered the universe. He thinks since he's marrying a young woman who will give him an heir, he's the smartest one. A bunch of idiots performing for the public." I listened to Marnie's complaints, and I only wanted to laugh. I looked at my garden, where red roses were in full bloom. I took a deep breath. The air here was so clean. "Listen, Marnie," I interrupted her. "Tell me what you're going to cook for dinner tonight." Marnie fell silent. "Nat, I'm telling you the gossip of the year, and you ask about dinner? It's just that their story is no longer of interest." I smiled slightly. "Let them show off. Let them consider themselves the best. That's their problem. And right now I need to put the chicken in the oven. Matthew and the guys from the studio are coming to have dinner at my place." Marnie looked at me intently through the screen and suddenly burst out laughing. "Oh, Ariana, you have reached enlightenment. You're right. Why worry about that riffraff? Go roast your chicken. Let it turn out delicious. If there's news, I'll call to tell you the next chapter. Bye. We hung up. I took off my apron, washed my hands, and started cooking dinner. Their laughter, their luxury. It was all on the other side of the world, and for the first time in 8 years, I realized I didn't feel a drop of jealousy or pain. They just seemed like strangers to me, and my life was now truly mine. I thought the wedding story would end with Marnie's call. I spent a wonderful evening with Matthew and my colleagues. We drank wine, ate roasted chicken with herbs, and discussed the hotel project animatedly. Work was progressing very well, and Matthew didn't stop praising my ideas. But the next morning, just after getting up, while I was making coffee and going out to the balcony to breathe fresh air, the phone rang again. It was Marnie. At this time in the city, it was already the height of the day. I was a little surprised. What happened? Another live broadcast? I joked, taking a sip of coffee. But Marnie's voice on the other end of the line wasn't like yesterday. It wasn't indignation, but overflowing euphoria, as if she had won the lottery. Ariana, are you sitting or standing? Her voice was a shriek. Standing. Why are you so happy? Sit down immediately. Sit down. I'm going to tell you something that will make you fall over. The best drama in history just started. My husband just came home and told me everything. I can't stop laughing. Curious, I pulled up a chair and sat down. Okay, I'm sitting. What happened? Ha ha! Marnie burst into a long laugh. Turns out there was an unexpected guest at yesterday's wedding. Guess who? I frowned. How would I know? Your Uncle Barry, your grandmother's friend. I almost choked on my coffee. Uncle Barry? What was he doing there? He doesn't know Leo at all. That's the kicker, Marnie said in a melodramatic voice. Turns out Leo's father had a small business dealing with your Uncle Barry years ago, and they still maintain polite relations. And you know your uncle? He has a loose tongue, especially when he drinks. He just returned from visiting his son and stopped in the city. I started imagining Uncle Barry with his characteristic booming voice in the middle of this fake wedding. And what happened? I asked, starting to get interested. My husband says that by the end of the banquet, Uncle Barry was already quite drunk. He was sitting with his other friends and started bragging. Marnie lowered her voice, imitating Uncle Barry. You know what? I just returned from Vermont, visited my son, and stopped by Willow Creek, that cute little village. My heart skipped a beat. Willow Creek. He met me. Exactly, Marnie exclaimed. Husband says Uncle Barry continued to tell everyone at the top of his lungs. Met little Ariana, granddaughter of my late friend. Mother of God, what a beautiful and smart girl she has become. Lives in a house with a rose garden that her grandmother left her. Lives like a queen. I was stunned. It was true. I had met Uncle Barry last week at the village market. He called out to me, and we talked for a few minutes. I invited him home, but he said he was in a hurry to get to the airport. I couldn't imagine it would turn out like this. Marnie continued talking without stopping. Your uncle started telling your life story to anyone who wanted to listen. And with his voice, he was heard even at neighboring tables. A vague sense of anxiety seized me. This story, told at Leo's wedding, couldn't be a simple anecdote. Husband says, Marnie continued, getting more excited, that just as Uncle Barry started talking about you, Leo and Natalie were thanking guests at the next table. They heard everything. Word for word. I held my breath. Marnie cleared her throat, continuing her performance. Uncle Barry yelled, Little Ariana, simply brilliant. Works in a design studio. Her boss there, a city guy, dotes on her, won't stop praising her. Says she just got a contract to design a luxury hotel, just like her grandmother. Smart and hard-working. I could imagine Leo's face at that moment. He, who always belittled my work, considered me an opportunist living at his expense. Well, wait, Ariana. Now comes the best part, Marnie shouted, unable to restrain herself. Now comes the climax. A friend at your uncle's table asked, Well, since the girl is so smart, she must get a good salary, right? And your Uncle Barry answered him, waving his hand. What salary? The salary is just for pin money. Her grandmother adored her. She didn't just leave her a house with a rose garden. She left her $1 million inheritance. They say there's a whole fortune, millions of dollars. Little Ariana is now a secret millionaire in Vermont, lives in luxury, free as the wind, and doesn't need to tolerate any cretin. I was dumbfounded. It was true that Grandma left me an inheritance, but I never spoke about the amount with anyone. I didn't know Uncle Barry knew such details, and I certainly didn't think he would lay it out in the middle of a wedding. Oh my God. Ariana, my husband says that the moment the word millions flew out of your uncle's mouth, Leo's face changed color from white to green. He could barely stand on his feet, and Natalie next to him had her mouth open. She couldn't believe her ears. At neighboring tables, they started whispering. The rumor spread like wildfire. The groom's ex-wife is a millionaire. Turns out the one he just dumped is truly rich, and he's marrying a secretary. The whispers grew. And you know what? Marnie said in a triumphant voice. Just when Leo was in shock from realizing he threw a gold mine into the trash, your Uncle Barry delivered the coup de grace. My heart clenched. There was something else. The rumor was spreading throughout the hall. Leo and Natalie were paralyzed. Natalie tried to pull Leo's hand, but he seemed glued to the floor. And then Uncle Barry, after talking about you, continued the conversation with his friend. I can imagine the scene. A strange silence hung around Uncle Barry's table. Everyone pricked up their ears. Marnie mimicked Uncle Barry's voice again. But in our time, my friend, there is a lot of deception. If you run into a gold digger, you're lost. Like what happened to the groom, this Leo. I flinched. He said it so directly. Almost, Marnie exclaimed. Husband says your uncle continued. The other day I went into the bank on business and met Frank, the deputy director of loans. He's my friend. And Frank told me a very funny thing. He told me that this Natalie, Leo's secretary, today's bride, came to the bank last week and made a scene. Leo and Natalie's faces, according to Marnie's husband's story, had no blood left in them. Frank told him, Marnie continued her performance, that this Natalie came to withdraw money from her savings account. And while she was doing it, she complained to the employee. She spoke so loudly that the whole bank heard. She said, "How tired I am, honestly. Thought I pulled a lottery ticket with a rich boss, but it turned out to be all a facade. We are about to get married, and I still have to lend him money. Just lent him $10,000 for the expenses of this wedding. What bad luck I have." Broke. A deathly silence descended on the hall for a moment. Marnie's husband said he could hear the clink of an ice cube falling into a glass. Two explosive truths revealed simultaneously before hundreds of guests. The abandoned ex-wife Ariana was actually a millionaire with a villa in the north and a huge fortune. The new wife Natalie, who bragged about her dress worth thousands, was actually a gold digger, and the groom Leo, who put on airs of importance, was penniless and forced to beg for money from his future wife to pay for the wedding. Ariana, Marnie's voice trembled. Leo couldn't take it anymore. He started shaking. He turned to look at Natalie, and he looked at her as if he wanted to kill her right there. I sat, paralyzed, on my balcony in Willow Creek. The cup of coffee in my hand had gone cold. I knew the best comedy and the worst tragedy had only just begun. I continued sitting motionless, phone pressed to my ear. Marnie's breathing on the other end was ragged, as if she had just run a marathon. My husband says, Marnie took a breath, that the scene was unforgettable. Leo was shaking like a leaf. The entire hall, which used to be full of noise, music, and laughter, plunged into a deathly silence. Hundreds of pairs of eyes bored into the two main characters. I can imagine the humiliation. Leo, A man who lived by appearances, who always needed to demonstrate his success and power, was left naked before all his guests and partners, exposed as an idiot who was duped by a woman. Natalie's face was a picture, Marnie continued. She tried to grab Leo by the arm, whispering, "Honey, let's go to another table. Everyone is looking at us." But Leo didn't move. He just stared at her intently. My husband says his eyes went bloodshot. It was scary. The glass of champagne he was holding started to shake. The golden liquid was ready to spill out. And then Marnie lowered her voice, as if telling a secret. "He screamed. No, he didn't scream. He roared like a wounded beast. 'Speak! What is this $10,000? You dared to say you lent me money?' Natalie stepped back in horror. "No, honey, he probably joked. Believe me, please." "Believe you?" Leo let out a bitter chuckle, a grimace. "So you could fool me like an imbecile. So you could drain money from me while I lost everything." Marnie's husband said Leo didn't finish the sentence. He couldn't voice the truth, that he threw away a fortune of millions of dollars. This revelation, combined with the deception that was before him, completely destroyed his self-control. "Crash!" Marnie shouted. "The glass!" He crushed the crystal glass with his hand. "Ariana!" He shattered it to smithereens with his own hand. Blood gushed, dripping onto the red carpet. I shuddered. I knew Leo had a bad temper, but I never thought he could lose control like that. Blood and champagne splashed everywhere, Marnie's husband recounted to his wife, staining Natalie's dress worth thousands. She screamed. Leo at that moment seemed to have gone mad. He looked at his bloody hand and then looked up at Natalie. "You tricked me!" he wailed in a broken voice. "This is all your fault. You ruined me." The rage exploded. Regret over losing me. Humiliation due to Natalie's deception. Rage from realizing he was a complete fool. It all piled up and turned him into a madman. He realized on his own wedding day that he missed out on a good, rich, and capable wife to stay with a lying gold digger, one who drained him to the last penny to arrange this showy wedding. He threw pure gold into the trash to pick up a painted rock. "And then?" I asked with a dry throat. "Chaos, total chaos." Marnie's voice was still shaking. "After screaming, 'You ruined me,' he started smashing everything around." "Smashing everything at his own wedding?" "Husband says yes," Marnie answered hastily. He waved his hand and knocked down a tower of champagne glasses from a nearby table. The sound of breaking glass was deafening. He overturned a whole table with food. Langoustines, lobsters, seafood, everything on the floor. Guests screamed and backed away in fear. And his parents? His parents were whiter than paper. They ran to him. His father tried to hug him. "Leo, what are you doing? Stop, please. This is a disgrace." But he pushed his own father. He was like an animal beside himself. He pointed at Natalie, who was paralyzed and shaking in her white dress, stained with wine and sauce. "Speak! And what about the pregnancy? You tricked me with that too," he screamed. The scream rang throughout the hall. This question became the spark that lit the powder keg. People started whispering louder. "Oh my God, the pregnancy is fake too. No wonder she touched her belly so often. It was pure theater. What a terrible woman." Natalie, cornered, reacted. Not a trace remained of her fake sweetness. She screamed too. "You're crazy! You dare say my baby is fake? Shut up!" Leo pushed her away with his hand. The shove was so strong that Natalie, on her high heels, lost her balance and fell backward. "Oh," Marnie exclaimed. "Husband says she fell and hit her stomach on the corner of a decorative table." I held my breath. Even though I didn't like her, the child was innocent. Did something happen to her? Natalie grabbed her stomach, pale as wax, screaming in pain. Seeing her, Leo froze for a second, probably scared. But just at that moment, Marnie paused to take a breath. Frank, the deputy director of the bank Uncle Barry spoke about, who was there as a partner of Leo's firm, came up seeing the commotion. And what did he say? Frank, surely to curry favor with Uncle Barry, spoke very loudly, Marnie narrated. "Mr. Leo, calm down. Is it true that Ms. Natalie complained at the bank? I heard myself how she said you were bad with money and that she had to lend you $10,000. I even have a copy of the bank statement right here." Marnie's husband said that after this phrase, the hall exploded. Confirmation from a bank employee right there. Nothing could be more convincing. It was the last straw. Leo had nothing left to lose. His career, his pride, his love, his money. Everything shattered into pieces in one night. "He let out a final roar," Marnie said, and overturned the head table where the 7-tier wedding cake stood. Cream flew through the air. "Get out! Everyone get out! The wedding is over." Guests crowded the exit in horror. They didn't just leave. They took out phones to take photos and videos. The wedding of the century, just as Natalie wanted, but a century of disasters. "My husband ran away too," Marnie finished. "He said on the way out you could still hear Leo smashing things, and Natalie crying and cursing. A circus. A pathetic circus. Karma is fast, Ariana." I hung up the phone with my heart in my fist. I went out to the balcony and looked at the roses sleeping under the night dew of Willow Creek. I thought I would be glad to know they got what they deserved. But no, I felt only deep exhaustion and disgust. A life built on greed and lies self-destructed in an instant. I slept poorly. Chaotic images of the wedding repeated in my head. The next morning, I woke up with circles under my eyes. I decided not to listen to news from Marnie anymore. Their story was over for me. I needed to focus on my own life. I spent all Sunday drawing. Work helped me forget the city disaster. But in the evening, when I turned off the computer, the phone vibrated. It was Marnie. I sighed, thinking not to answer, but the call was insistent. "What else, Marnie? I'm tired. I don't want to know anything more." Wait. Marnie's voice was pure excitement again. "Just this time. It's the finale of yesterday's episode. I promise after this you will sleep like a baby." "Come on," I grumbled. "Listen," she insisted. "My husband just told me. He said when he went down to the parking lot for the car, he witnessed a scene even better than in the hall." I gave up. Okay, 5 minutes. "My husband saw Leo and Natalie fighting in the parking lot," Marnie said. "Next to her were her parents with funeral faces, trying to take her away. She didn't go to the hospital?" I was surprised after that fall. "What hospital?" Marnie laughed contemptuously. "It was all theater. My husband hid behind a pillar and heard everything." Natalie no longer pretended to be a sweet victim. She stood with hands on hips and screamed in Leo's face. Marnie cleared her throat, imitating Natalie. "You damn psycho! You made me a laughingstock in front of everyone. You ruined my wedding." Leo, with his hand bandaged with a handkerchief through which blood was seeping, screamed back at her. Marnie continued. "It was you who ruined me. You liar. You were robbing me." "And then Natalie laughed," Marnie said with disdain. "A laugh that made my husband's hair stand on end." "Robbing you? As if you have money to rob. Who paid for this wedding? Tell me. My $10,000 wasn't even enough for the start. My parents had to mortgage the deed to their village house to pay for this farce, just so you would look good. You." I was stunned. So Leo not only asked her for money, but squeezed everything out of her parents. He was stuck too deep in the mud of his own ego. "My husband says," Marnie continued. When Leo heard this, he lost the power of speech. He didn't expect her to throw this in his face. So, the battle in the parking lot without an audience and cameras was the place where their true nature came out. No love left, only money, lies, and hate. Natalie's parents, seeing their daughter had let her tongue loose, tried to shut her mouth. Marnie continued. "Daughter, please shut up already. Let's go home." But she couldn't stop anymore. She pushed her parents away and pointed at Leo. "I'll tell you one thing. I married you for your money, for your director position, and for this wedding. And now you've ruined everything." Leo, recovering from the shock, clenched his teeth. "You dare?" And then Marnie lowered her voice. Natalie delivered her final blow. She put her hand on her stomach, but this time not with pride, but as a threat, and said, Marnie whispered, "Listen to me carefully. This child is yours. Want him to live or die? Sign the downtown apartment over to my name right now and give me 50 million rubles, approximately $500,000 in cash. If not, tomorrow I will have an abortion, and then I will go to your company and tell all your partners what kind of person you are." My blood froze, using her own child for blackmail. That was too cruel. "And what did Leo do?" I asked. My husband says Leo stood quietly for a while, and then laughed. A laugh even more frightening than his screams. He cackled. When he stopped, he looked at Natalie and growled, "Dream on!" He took out his keys, ran to the car, and even though Natalie tried to block the way, he hit the gas, almost running her over, and drove off, leaving her and her parents alone in the parking lot amidst the remains of the luxurious wedding. My husband ran away too, so he wouldn't get splashed by anything. We were silent for a moment. "Marnie, I have doubts about the pregnancy." "I suspect too," she interrupted me. "My husband says the fall seemed hard, but soon she was in the parking lot, screaming and with incredible energy. Suspect the pregnancy is fake, or that she just used a drugstore test to trick Leo, used it to force the wedding, and now to extract money." I let out a long sigh. Fake or not, that child was a victim. "Well, Ariana," Marnie said in a tired voice, "let's consider the show over. Two greedy and lying people who destroyed each other. Finita la commedia. Go to sleep, I need to too. So much drama is exhausting." I hung up, looked into the night. Willow Creek was calm. The sound of crickets filled the garden. I realized the storm in the city had passed, and it no longer had anything to do with me. I asked Marnie not to tell me anything more about them. I didn't want the trash of the past staining my present. I immersed myself in work, in the hotel project. But a month later, during one of our calls, Marnie couldn't hold back. "Ariana, I have to tell you." Her voice was serious this time. "Leo's business exploded for real." "What else?" "His career. It's over. My husband says that after the scandal, videos of him smashing the wedding and screaming at Natalie went viral. Although they were quickly deleted, all his important partners saw them. And what did they do? Mass terminated contracts. His most important partner, a Japanese group, sent a letter of immediate termination of cooperation. They said they couldn't work with someone of questionable morals, who doesn't control his emotions and treats his family so cruelly. I remained silent. It was inevitable. For a businessman, reputation is more important than money. Having lost the major contract, the company went to the bottom, Marnie continued. Key employees, the good ones, the ones who worked with you, left altogether. Said they couldn't work for a crazy boss who also owed them money. Left and took clients with them. So fast? I was surprised. Well, yes, now he's desperate. My husband says he spends nights inviting small clients to dinner, trying to save the remnants. He drinks so much that last week he ended up in the ER with stomach bleeding. Stayed for 2 days and escaped to continue drinking. But it's useless. No one wants to board a ship that sinks with the captain with such glory. I shook my head. The career Leo was so proud of, which he used to humiliate me, was collapsing due to his ego and bad decisions. I'm hanging up, Marnie, I said. I need to meet with Matthew. Yes, you're right, she agreed. These people don't deserve a minute of your time. Live well, and that's it. I hung up, looked at the 3D design of the hotel lobby on my screen. I chose a rustic and cozy style with local ceramics and oak. I felt pride in my work. It was real. It created value. Not like Leo's sandcastle career. Several months passed. I finished the hotel design and started supervising the work. The work was intense but exciting. One evening, Marnie called. Her voice sounded strange, almost sympathetic. "Ariana, today my husband saw Leo." "Where?" "At a bar?" "No," she said quietly, "at the flea market. In the afternoon, my husband went to buy some things and saw a thin man, looking like a beggar, hastily eating a sandwich in the corner. He got curious. He looked closer and realized it was Leo. Thin and looking like a beggar? Is it that bad?" My husband was dumbfounded. Says Leo was skin and bones, with days-old stubble, dirty hair, and in wrinkled, stained clothes. He ate the sandwich greedily, with fear, looking around. Looks 10 years older. His company went completely bankrupt. He's up to his ears in debt. You know where he got the money for the wedding? From loan sharks. Thought he would pay back with Natalie's parents' money or new contracts, but everything went to dust. Now the loan sharks are chasing him. And our apartment? He mortgaged it for the wedding. The bank already seized it and put it up for auction. My husband says he lives in hiding, dares not go to his parents so as not to involve them in problems. Sleeps on a sofa in a sealed office. Last week, collectors found him and beat him up in front of the building. Hearing this, I no longer felt satisfaction, only bitter sadness. After all, this was the man I had loved for 8 years. My husband hesitated, Marnie said. Was going to go up to talk to him, but Leo noticed he was being watched. Got scared, threw the sandwich and ran away like a real fugitive. And Natalie? After the scandal, the pregnancy turned out to be false, as we suspected. No one wants to hire her. Her parents, burning with shame, sold the house in the village to pay debts for the wedding and took her with them. They say it's very hard for them. 2 people who reveled in my pain paid a very high price for their greed. Life is sometimes fair. I hung up with a clenched heart, but this sadness was fleeting. I looked at my garden, where lavender bloomed in a purple sea, took a deep breath. Their life, however tragic it might be, was no longer mine. A week later, I presented the final hotel project to the investor, a very demanding Swiss man. I prepared everything down to the smallest detail. When I finished, the investor, who according to Matthew never smiled, stood up and applauded. "Wonderful, Miss Ariana," he said in French with admiration. "This is exactly the soul I was looking for. You did an excellent job." Matthew beside me smiled proudly. The project was approved without a single change. Upon returning to the studio, Matthew told me, "Ariana, you surprised me. The client is delighted. He will recommend us for a much larger resort in Provence. It's the whole team's work, Matthew, but the idea was yours. To celebrate this, the company decided to raise your salary by 30% starting this month, and you deserve a week of paid vacation. Go wherever you want and recharge your batteries, because the project in Provence is waiting for you." I felt so happy I wanted to jump in the middle of the street. A raise, a vacation, and most importantly, my work was recognized. I realized that by leaving Leo, I lost nothing. I found myself in much more. I decided to use my vacation to travel around the Golden Ring. Let's adapt. New England coast. I rented a small car and drove along country roads, stopping in guest houses, eating goat cheese and toasted bread with butter. I met new people. We talked about wine, art, and the beauty of life. I realized that my value is not in being someone's wife and not in the money I have, but in my independence, in my ability to create my own happiness. When I returned to Willow Creek, my garden was even more beautiful. I signed up for advanced French courses and a pottery workshop. I wanted to continue learning. One afternoon, while I was reading in the garden, Marnie called. We talked often, but only about my life, her work, her kids. We never mentioned Leo or Natalie again. They disappeared from my life like a nightmare that dissipates at dawn. I watched the sun dance on the leaves. I realized those 8 years of marriage, though painful, taught me a lesson, and the divorce wasn't the end. It was the beginning. A door to a new path. A path full of sun. I smiled. I knew my future on this path would only get better.